and Mr. Stephen Howard.
Hey, thank you, Daniel. Good to talk with you. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Stephen, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, I was born in the United States and educated in the United States. I've spent most of my adult life living outside the United States. I lived in Singapore for 21 years, worked and traveled all around Asia during that period. Then I lived in Australia for 12 years, came back to the US for a few years to look after my father who had some health issues. And then when COVID hit, I went to Mexico City and I spent the COVID lockdown period in Mexico City. So now I'm back in the US. I'm currently living in Phoenix.
Mr. Stephen Howard, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world and your empowering books. So let's talk about your latest book, Human Mindset. What does the term human mindset mean?
Well, Daniel, humany is a word I created. I combine humanity, and harmony together. And the premise of a humany mindset is really simple that we need to approach all decisions in life and all interactions with others from a place of compassion, kindness, peace, and respect. And that is the best expression of our agency to create a better world for our children and grandchildren to inherit. So that's why the subtitle of the book is Change the World by Changing Your Mindset. If you change your mindset, you can change your little piece of the world. None of us can solve world hunger, or none of us going to solve the Middle East peace crisis, but we can all make the world a little bit better, a little bit nicer, a little bit more compassionate in our own little corners, our own little patches of the world.
How does human mindset influence the way we approach challenges in life?
Well, those who read the book hopefully will change their mindset. I talk about how our mindset is our perspective on the world, but it's also our perspective how we interact with each other. I'll tell you, moving back to the US about 6 months ago, I'm just amazed when I see people walking. Everyone has their, not everyone, but most people have their head down and they're not all looking at their phones. I go for my morning walk and I pass people going the other direction. They have their head down and they just don't want to make eye contact. We live in such a divisive world. Everyone's afraid of recognizing another human being. And I think hopefully what the book will do is convince people to realize that we're all human beings. We have more in common with each other than differences. And just start treating each other with a little bit of respect, a little bit of compassion. And our day will be better as well as the days of the people we interact with.
Yes, people, respect begets respect, as they say. And what ways does adopting a human mindset affect personal growth and self awareness?
Well, I think it will help people grow. I mean, growth comes from getting outside our comfort zones. I mean, you don't become a good skier by staying on the bunny trails. The first time you go skiing, you gotta stretch yourself. You got to go onto the harder trails, and that's how you become a better skier. Well, you got to get outside your comfort zone in dealing with people. And realizing that we're all human beings. I'll tell you an example here of what I mean by a mindset change. Here in the United States, we have a lot of homeless, and you see people begging at the traffic intersections, and they're usually in the left hand, in the middle of the intersection where the left hand turns are made. And so people call them left hand losers. And we look down on the homeless. We look down on them as if they're lazy, if they're unwashed, they don't have enough fortitude, to get up and get a job. Well, that may not be true. They're struggling, and I tell you one thing, Daniel. I've said this before. If I ever encountered a situation where I had no money, I had no family to support me, I'm not sure I could live as a homeless person on the streets. Quite frankly, I think I would take a handful of sleeping pills and a bottle of Venezuelan rum and say goodbye. So I now look at the homeless people as people have fortitude. And that's a mindset change. You see them as they have more strength than I do in that area, that they've got the fortitude to keep living and keep battling whatever they're battling Whereas I admit I would be tempted to take the easy way out. I don't have that kind of fortitude. That is a mindset change, and that's what I'm trying to get people to think. How do you think about people, and change your mindset about how you think about people.
So, Mr. Steven, how does the human mindset promote a sense of balance between personal ambition and empathy for others?
That's a great question, Daniel. And it's a thought provoking question, quite frankly. The idea is to have empathy for people. Now, empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is you can understand how they feel, um, and you will grow by that. You're stretching your boundaries. So by understanding that, people have their own issues. So rather than we all react to situations, to people and events. And what I'm encouraging people to do is to slow down and respond. So, someone cuts you off in traffic. Our first reaction is to blow the horn at them, give them the middle finger, yell at them, curse at them, hope they have an accident down the road. Um, None of that does any good for us. It doesn't change the other person at all. It only raises our blood pressure. It only makes us angry. So why react that way? Just let the person go. Let them speed in front of you. Let them cut in front of you if necessary, as long as they're not endangering you. Almost like wish them well. So that's having empathy for the other person. We have no idea what's going on in people's lives, quite frankly. That person could be having a really bad day. They could be stressed out. They could be having a relative who's having a medical emergency. Or, yes, they could also be an idiot. But doesn't matter. So why should we damage our health? Because when we raise our blood pressure, when we get angry over situations like that, it just causes stress and anxiety, which is not good for our heart and it's not good for our brain. So why do it?
Yes, be kind every day, people. So, what role does emotional intelligence play in the human mindset?
Well, emotional intelligence is not constraining our emotions. We all have the right to our emotions. I mean, we have the right to get angry. It's how we express our anger. I mean, let's take a work environment. You get angry at a colleague. You can be disappointed in them. You can get angry. You can be mad at them. But throwing a empty cup of coffee, a coffee cup at them across the room, that's not a good expression of our anger. That's not acceptable. Maybe even shouting too loud is not acceptable. Banging on the table may not be the most appropriate way of dealing with. So emotional intelligence is understanding our emotions, owning our emotions, understanding what's causing our emotions, and then figuring out the best way to express our emotions. And empathy is part of emotional intelligence, going back to your previous question. But it's understanding, and also understanding other people's emotions. Somebody may come in, we all have bad days, and somebody may come in grumpy in the workplace. Does that mean they're a grumpy person? Or does that just mean they're having a bad day? Now, if they come in 29 out of 30 days grumpy, well, maybe that's their character. But they come in 1, 2, 3 days in a row, maybe something's going wrong in their personal life and it's impacting their professional life. So empathy means understanding that, being able to putting ourselves in their shoes, so to speak, and giving them the leeway, but also maybe giving us some comfort to help them through whatever they're going through at the time.
So, Mr. Steven, what are the key principles that define the human mindset?
Well, the key principles are the words I used earlier. It's peace, interact with people from a point of peacefulness, compassion, kindness, and respect. And then it's tied together, or the foundation underneath those four principles is accepting people for who they are, allowing people to be authentic, not asking people to change just to make you feel better. And the other underlying foundation is harmony, bringing more harmony into the world. And that could be as simple as talking quietly. And so, Daniel, for your audience, when we're talking about mindset, it's the way we perceive the world, the events around us. Now, for instance, I like peace and quiet. I'm a writer. I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't like loud talking, loud noise. When I'm in an airport and I see a group of people talking and they're talking loudly and they're laughing and they're just having a good time, I personally find that almost offensive. It's like, hey, why? We're in public. Can't you be quiet? But then that's me. person sitting next to me might look at that same group of people and their mindset is, wow, what a jovial group of people it is. Boy, those guys are really friendly with each other. um, and so we're both seeing the same interaction of another group, but our mindset, how we perceive it, how we interpret it, is that's what our mindset's all about. So being able to change our mindset and have empathy and understand, hey, okay, those guys are having a good time just because I want peace and quiet, just because I want to sit here and read my book. um, Maybe I need to move somewhere else instead of, giving them the eagle eye and or going, shh, can't you guys be quiet, sort of thing. So that's how we change our mindsets, and therefore, when we change our mindsets, we change our behaviors.
Yes. So, how does human mindset encourage a holistic view of success, incorporating mental, emotional, and social well-being?
Well, that's the essence of what we're talking about here. I think, Daniel, is that you know having a human mindset, approaching people from a different perspective, having the empathy that we've talked about, we won't be as stressed. We won't be as anxious. We won't be as angry with others, whether they're strangers or whether they're family members or friends that we know. When we reduce our stress and our anxiety, our overall health improves. Stress is the number one factor for heart disease, as well as it's a leading cause of Alzheimer's and dementia. So, particularly the kind of stress that we have in our 30s and 40s, that will increase our risk for Alzheimer's and dementia in our 60s and 70s and 80s. So it approaches both of those. The emotional is, we just feel better about ourselves. I mean, isn't it much? Don't we feel much better when we smile at another person, when we hold the door open for somebody who's, going into the local Target store, for instance, and letting the mother with the two children who's frazzled and, obviously she's got a lot on her mind, let her go first rather than rushing to walk in front of her so we get the shopping cart before she does. If we just, these little acts of kindness, when we reflect on them, we feel better about ourselves. I mean, the mother might not even remember that act of kindness 2 hours from now, but we'll remember before we go to sleep and think, hey, I'm not such a bad person. That was a nice thing I did today for that lady. So that will help our emotional state as well.
How does the human mindset foster resilience in the face of setbacks and failures?
I think that's one of the keys to human mindset is a bit of optimism, not rose-colored glasses, but knowing that we can improve. Having resilience comes from a growth mindset, which is a core aspect of the human mindset. Knowing that we can learn, as I said earlier, we will grow from outside our comfort levels. But just by observing other people and interacting with other people, we find out that maybe our problems aren't as bad as others. So we become a little bit more resilient about it. We become more optimistic that we can get over the hurdles that we're personally facing. And, things don't seem so difficult. And then also part of the human mindset is giving back, being a change maker, a difference maker, not a change maker, being a difference maker in other people's lives. So whatever we can do, if we can make a difference in somebody else's life, then that again builds our own emotional state. But it also shows them, when we're doing that, I mean, whatever we're doing as a volunteer helping other people, we're not focusing on our own problems. And look, we all have problems, we all have issues. Life is not perfect literally at any time. There's always something going wrong, it seems like. But when we're helping others out, we don't think about our problems. And when we don't think about our problems, sometimes our problems just resolve themselves or they go away. We put them in perspective and find out, well, that's not really such a big issue. I don't need to worry about that so much because I need to worry about other things, more important things in life.
So, Mr. Steven, what will be your advice for those people out there who want to try this human mindset?
Well, obviously, buy the book and read it. you the book is available on Amazon around the world in both print version and Kindle version. It's not an audio book yet. Um, but my real advice is just think about how you view the world. Think about my concept earlier about the left lane losers. And how do you view a homeless person? What's your perspective? Do you automatically think that they're lazy, that they're dirty, that they're a drug user? Because they're all, it's like they're not all the same. Not all of them are drug users. Not all of them are dirty. Some, and particularly in the United States, I mean, we have a lot of homeless veterans, people who served in the military and, served in the military campaigns overseas. And for whatever reason, they're out on the streets, whatever's happened to them in their life. So just think about that and think about, what could you do? First of all, what can you think differently about them? If you just saw a homeless person and smiled at them, that might be all it takes for them to have a better day. Just everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to be recognized. So just recognize them. But typically, when we see a homeless person or a drug addict or somebody we don't like, we turn our head, we avert making eye contact with them. And that just makes them feel worse. So just
Yes.
be kind, just be compassionate, whatever you can do. My little thing, my little tip is, I save all the coins that I get back in change throughout the course of the year. And when I go home, I put them into a canister. And then every December, I just did this a couple of weeks ago. I roll the coins up and I take them to the bank. And I usually end up with, I don't know, about 115 to $130. And I ask for $1 bills. And I put those $1 bills in my car. And when I see somebody, or if I'm walking down the street, I always have a couple of dollars in my pocket. So that's the money I will donate throughout the next year. So when I see somebody that, looks like they could use a little bit of a handout, I give them $1 or $2. The other thing I do, the other thing I encourage people, I mean, I do this, there's between my house and the supermarket that I go to is a little homeless camp. And so when I do my weekly grocery shopping, I typically buy one of these cooked packs of baked chicken. And you get 8 pieces. You get two breasts, two wings, two thighs, whatever sort of thing, two drumsticks. And I take that on my way home. I will stop and I will hand it to the people in the homeless camp. And the interesting thing, it really amazes me, they're all hungry, but they don't
Yes.
fight with the food. They immediately open it up and start sharing. They start handing it out. So whoever I hand it to starts handing it to other people. They share that food in a communal fashion. So those are just little things that we can do to make the world a better place and make the world a better place for our children and grandchildren to inherit.
Yes. Definitely. Totally agree, Mr. Steven. So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, that's interesting because at the end of the year, I'm usually thinking about that. My short term goal right now, I'm working on my next book. Um, it's going to come out hopefully in March, maybe April. I don't set myself too rigid deadlines, but I have to have some deadline, or else I just wouldn't get around to writing it. So that's my short term goal in life. I think my long term really goal is to understand myself a bit better. I mean, I'm in my 60s and reflecting on what I've done in life and what I want to do for the remainder of my life, and keep spreading this message about humanity, and hopefully it takes off. I would like people to change their mindsets and just deal with each other. I mean, if through this broadcast, if we can impact 20, 30, 40 people who suddenly change their way they deal with people, well, and then those 20, 30, 40 people change their way, I mean, it will cascade. And you know just this podcast alone, we might end up impacting two, three, 400 people indirectly, just through this message of changing the world by changing our mindsets.
Yes, yes, yes. And according to my analytics, I got 154 countries listening to this podcast. So we are,
154 countries. Well,
yes.
let's talk about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, not 20, 30, 40. Way to go, Daniel.
I hope so. This podcast is belong to 10% popular show globally. So we empowering people out there. So Mr. Steven, what are some real life examples of people successfully embodying the human mindset?
We hear, the funny thing is, we always hear the negative news on the TV stations and the radio stations, but there's so much good news out there. You know, I read recently about a 9-year-old boy who was creating a lemonade stand because one of his classmates had cancer, and obviously he's only going to raise $100 or so maybe through, but it doesn't matter. It's his effort, it's his attitude. I mean, you hear about people who will give up their seats on an airplane for an elderly person or a pregnant mother or something. I saw on my recent flight, I was flying across the United States a couple of weeks ago, and I actually saw on an airplane a gentleman. I thought he did a wonderful job. Behind him was a mother with like an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old was uncomfortable and crying and kicking the back of the gentleman's seat. And I hear all these things about air rage. And I thought for sure that gentleman was going to stand up and shout at the mother. And he actually turned around and started talking to the 2-year-old with a nice, soothing voice. And the mother I could see the relief on her face that she wasn't going to be yelled at for the actions of her child. So it's these little things, Daniel. Like I said, we don't need to solve world hunger. We don't need to solve the Middle East peace crisis. We don't need to solve the big issues. We need to solve the little issues as well. And I could go on and on with examples of people exemplifying a human mindset, just the way they treat one another with peacefulness, compassion, kindness, and respect.
So, Mr. Steven, to sum up our episode for today, how does human mindset align with the idea of living a purpose driven life?
Well, and that's what I'm thinking about in my life, Daniel. But in the book, I talk about the purpose driven life is really about how can you make a difference in the world? What can you do personally? Where is your passion? That could be anything from volunteering for Meals on Wheels. It could be coaching your child's sports team, but coaching in such a way that you're not the angry coach. You're not the yelling and screaming coach. You're the compassionate coach. You're teaching children how to play whatever sport it is, and your emphasis is on their growth rather than what your win-loss record is as a coach. That would be an example of doing that. The I could give you many other examples. I don't want to run on and on here, but it's just and in the workplace, leading with compassion, not creating a drama in the workplace, making the workplace because statistics show 75% of workers in both Canada and the United States have claimed that they've had burnout issues in the last 12 months, at least once. And so just finding ways to not pressure people, understanding that people have a life outside work, and encouraging and allowing them to have that life outside work, and delaying deadlines when necessary, or not demanding people work 60-hour weeks just to meet a deadline if it's absolutely not necessary. Those are the ways to do things.
Mr. Stephen Howard, again, thank you so much for sharing your talent to the world. And we are looking forward for more empowering books like this. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Oh, yes, please. I mean, you can find my books on Amazon worldwide. They're in print version, they're in Kindle version. And after the Human Mindset, a month later, I published a book called Human Mindset Quotes, which talks a little bit about the philosophy of human mindset, but it's really loaded with almost 1,000 motivational, inspirational quotes about changing your mindset and making the world a better place for our children and grandchildren to inherit. So please buy the books and send me a note. Tell me what you like about the books or where I can improve.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Stephen Howard, because if you support him, more award-winning picks to come. So, Mr. Stephen, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Great conversation. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon. Mr. Steven, would you like to be my feature author of the month of